The crystal wine glass didn't shatter when he slammed the document onto the table, but the sound was just as violent. My father, Jeffrey, slid the paper across the polished mahogany, right past the roast duck he'd ordered to impress his investors. He didn't look at them. He looked straight at me, his eyes cold and devoid of anything resembling love. "Sign it," he commanded, his voice low enough to be a threat but loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Sign this power of attorney giving me full control of your mother's trust fund, or you can pack your bags and get out of my house tonight." The room went dead silent. The investors, men in expensive suits who had been laughing moments ago, froze with their forks halfway to their mouths. My stepmother, Cynthia, took a delicate sip of her wine, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. She'd been waiting for this moment for years. This wasn't a request, it was an ambush. Public, calculated, and designed to leverage my deepest fear, homelessness, to force my submission. He knew I had nowhere to go. He knew I was weeks away from turning 18, and he was betting everything that I would break. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. For a heartbeat, the only sound in the room was the hum of the air conditioning and the blood rushing in my ears. I looked at the pen Jeffrey had placed next to the document. It was a Mont Blanc, heavy and black, the kind of pen used to sign treaties or death warrants. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't look at my stepmother, who was practically vibrating with the hope that I would cause a scene. Instead, I reached out and picked up the pen. My name is Savannah. I am 17 years old, 3 weeks shy of 18. And for the last 2 years, I have lived in the unfinished basement of this mansion, while my stepsister slept in my childhood bedroom. They thought they had broken me. They thought I was the scared little girl who would sign away her future just to keep a roof over her head. But they didn't know I'd spent the last 6 months reading every financial document Jeffrey left carelessly on his desk. I pulled the paper closer, not to sign, but to read. My eyes scanned the dense legal paragraphs, cutting through the jargon. It was all there, in black and white. Clause 4, Section B, granting full authority to liquidate assets for the purpose of debt consolidation. He wasn't trying to protect my money. He was trying to drain it to pay off the gambling debts he'd been hiding from his investors. Yesterday, he told me I was a parasite eating him out of house and home. He said I was lucky he didn't throw me to the wolves. Today, I looked up from the paper and met his gaze. The fear was gone. In its place was a cold, sharp clarity. "This isn't a consolidation, Jeffrey," I said, my voice steady and clear, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "This is theft." The word hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. The investor to my left, a man named Mr. Sterling, lowered his wine glass. Jeffrey's face turned a violent shade of purple. "Sign the damn paper, Savannah," he hissed through gritted teeth. "Don't test me." "I'm not testing you," I replied. "I'm declining." I lifted the heavy Mont Blanc pen. Jeffrey's eyes widened, thinking I was about to capitulate. Instead, I opened my hand and let the pen drop. It hit the mahogany table with a loud, final clack that sounded like a gavel coming down. I pushed my chair back and stood up. The scraping of wood against the floor was the only sound in the cavernous room. Jeffrey started to rise, his fists clenching, but I was already moving. "My bags are packed," I said, addressing the room but looking only at him. "You wanted me out? I'm going. But the money stays with me." I turned my back on them. I didn't run. I walked. I walked past the expensive art on the walls, past the dining room where I had never been welcome, and toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Mr. Sterling clear his throat and ask, "Jeffrey, what exactly is the status of that trust fund you promised to leverage?" I didn't stay to hear the answer. The humiliation he had planned for me was now entirely his own. I walked fast, my sneakers squeaking against the polished marble floor of the foyer. The house smelled of lavender and expensive cleaning products, a sterile scent that tried to mask the rot underneath. My backpack was waiting by the door where I'd left it an hour ago. I swung it over my shoulder, the weight of it grounding me. Inside was everything I owned that mattered. My laptop, a change of clothes, and a binder filled with financial documents I'd spent months collecting. I paused at the front door, my hand on the cold brass handle. "My name is Savannah. I'm 17 years old, and for the last 2 years, I haven't had a bedroom. When my mother died, she left me a trust fund worth $450,000, her life insurance, plus interest. She wanted me to have a future, but Jeffrey saw that money and saw a lifeline for his failing real estate empire. Almost immediately after the funeral, Cynthia moved in. She complained that the house felt cluttered. So, she moved my things into the unfinished basement. It was damp, cold, and smelled of mildew, but she called it private. Then she turned my childhood bedroom into a studio for her daughter, Courtney. Courtney needed the natural light for her social media videos. I needed a place to sleep without shivering. I guess we all have priorities. But the physical displacement wasn't the worst part. It was the erasure. Slowly, methodically, Cynthia replaced every trace of my mother. The family photos on the mantel were swapped for abstract art prints that matched the sofa. My mother's piano was sold because nobody plays it. I realized something then. Standing in that foyer one last time. Jeffrey didn't just dislike me. He needed me to fail. In every toxic system, there has to be a scapegoat. Someone to carry the shame, the blame, the debt so the rest of the family can feel perfect. I was the vessel for their dysfunction. If I succeeded, if I thrived, it would prove that they were the problem. And they couldn't allow that. I tightened my grip on the door handle. They wanted a scapegoat. Instead, they were about to get a ghost. I opened the door and stepped out into the humid Atlanta night. The air was thick and heavy, but for the first time in years, I could breathe. Aunt Kathleen was waiting at the curb, the engine of her sedan already humming. She didn't wave. She just unlocked the doors, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. She knew what we were up against. I opened the back door and tossed my backpack onto the seat. For a split second, I thought I'd made it. I thought I could just slide in, lock the door, and disappear. But Jeffrey wasn't going to let $450,000 walk away that easily. Savannah. The roar came from the porch. I turned to see my father sprinting down the driveway. He wasn't the composed businessman sipping wine anymore. His face was flushed, his tie crooked, his eyes wild with panic. He realized that if I left, the narrative he'd built for his investors, the happy family, the secure assets would crumble before dessert was served. I reached for the door handle, but he was too fast. He didn't grab me. He threw his entire body onto the hood of Aunt Kathleen's car. The metal groaned under his weight. He sprawled across the front windshield, blocking our view, his palms slamming against the glass. "You're not going anywhere," he screamed, his voice cracking. "That bag. She's stealing family property." I stared at him through the glass. He looked deranged. This was a man who prided himself on control, on appearances, now spread-eagled on a Honda Civic in front of the entire neighborhood. "Jeffrey, get off the car," Aunt Kathleen yelled, her hand hovering over the horn. "She has my wife's jewelry in that bag," he lied, loud enough for the investors watching from the front door to hear. "She's robbing us." Then came Cynthia. She ran down the steps, not with anger, but with a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She clasped her hands over her mouth, looking frantically at the neighbors who were stepping out onto their lawns. "Please," she wailed, her voice shrill and trembling. "Someone help. She's having a mental episode. She's not well." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. In seconds, she had reframed the situation. I wasn't a victim fleeing abuse. I was a thief, a mental patient, a danger to myself. The neighbors whispered. The investors looked concerned. My father pounded on the glass again, his face inches from mine, distorted by rage in the windshield. "Get out of the car, Savannah. Give me the bag. And we can forget this happened." My heart hammered against my ribs, but my mind was ice cold. He thought he had me trapped. He thought physical force and public shame would make me cower. He thinks he's blocking my exit, I thought, watching the sweat drip down his forehead. But he's just blocking his own escape. I didn't open the door. I didn't scream back. I just looked at my watch. 20 minutes. That's how long it had been since I made the call. Jeffrey was panting, his breath fogging up the windshield. He looked down at me through the glass, a twisted grin spreading across his face. He thought he had won. He thought that by physically overpowering two women in a driveway, he had reasserted his dominance. He thought the only thing standing between him and the money was a locked car door. He didn't hear the engine behind him until it was too late. A sleek, black sedan turned into the driveway, its high beams sweeping across the lawn, illuminating the neighbors who had gathered to watch the show. It pulled up inches from the bumper of Aunt Kathleen's car, effectively boxing us and Jeffrey in. Jeffrey spun around on the hood, shielding his eyes from the glare. "Who the hell is this?" he shouted, sliding off the car to confront the intruder. "Get off my property!" The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe, and he moved with the terrifying, predatory grace of a shark entering a feeding frenzy. It was Marcus. I had found him 6 months ago on a forum for victims of financial abuse. He wasn't a family lawyer who held hands and passed tissues. He was a forensic accountant turned litigator who specialized in destroying fraudsters. I had paid his retainer with the $8,200 I'd saved, working double shifts at the coffee shop money I'd hidden in a hollowed-out biology textbook in the basement. Jeffrey stomped toward him, his chest puffed out. I said, "Get out. This is a private family matter." Marcus didn't even blink. He adjusted his cufflinks, walked past Jeffrey as if he were a piece of furniture, and stopped at the passenger window of our car. He nodded at me. "Good evening, Savannah," he said, his voice a low, smooth baritone that cut through the humidity. "I apologize for the delay. The gate code was changed." "Who are you?" Jeffrey barked, grabbing Marcus by the shoulder. Marcus stopped. He looked at the hand on his shoulder, then up at Jeffrey's face. He didn't shove him back. He just stared with such intense, cold disinterest that Jeffrey let go as if he'd touched a hot stove. "My name is Marcus Thorne," he said, loud enough for the investors on the porch to hear. "I am Savannah's legal counsel." Jeffrey let out a bark of incredulous laughter. He looked back at Cynthia, then at the investors, grinning like it was the punchline to a joke. "Her lawyer? She's 17. She works at a coffee shop. She can't afford a lawyer. She paid my retainer in full 3 months ago," Marcus corrected, opening his briefcase on the hood of his sedan. "And as of midnight tonight, when she turns 18, she is my client. However, given the physical assault I just witnessed, I'm stepping in early." Jeffrey's smile faltered, but his arrogance held firm. "You're trespassing. Whatever garbage she told you is a lie. She's a troubled kid stealing family heirlooms." Marcus pulled a thick document from his bag. "Actually, Jeffrey, I'm here to discuss the audit." "The what?" Marcus handed him the report. "An independent forensic audit of the trust. We tracked your attempted withdrawals, the fake maintenance fees, and the loan applications where you used Savannah's assets as collateral." Jeffrey skimmed it, scoffing. "This is nonsense. I'm her guardian. I manage the money." "You managed it," Marcus corrected calmly. "Past tense. And you left a paper trail." Jeffrey crushed the pages and stepped forward, trying to intimidate him. "You have no authority. That money is under my roof. You can't touch it or her." Marcus smiled thinly. "I don't need to touch you. I just need you to keep talking." Jeffrey turned to me, manic. He wasn't afraid of the audit. He believed laws were optional. "You think this scares me?" he shouted. "I'll bury you in court." He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Emergency," he yelled. "My daughter and her aunt are fleeing a robbery. Stolen jewelry, over $50,000. I froze. He wasn't stopping me, he was framing me. Sirens arrived minutes later. Police blocked the driveway. Jeffrey played the victim perfectly, pointing at my backpack. "The pearls are in there. Arrest her." The officer took the bag and dumped it onto the cruiser's hood. No jewelry fell out, only clothes, a charger, and a thick binder labeled Trust Fund Audit. Jeffrey's face drained. "Check the lining," he screamed. "There's nothing here," the officer said. Jeffrey spun toward my aunt. "Search the car." That was when Marcus stepped forward. "Before you conduct a warrantless search, officer, you should see this." He handed over a single document. "An insurance claim," Marcus said evenly. "Filed 6 months ago. Mr. Sterling reported a Mikimoto pearl necklace stolen and collected a $50,000 payout." The officer turned his flashlight toward the porch. The pearls were glowing around Cynthia's neck. Silence fell. Jeffrey had called the police to frame me and exposed himself to insurance fraud and possession of stolen property. The officer reached for his cuffs. "Mr. Sterling, turn around." Jeffrey stammered excuses, but it was over. I picked up my backpack, got into my aunt's car, and closed the door. As we drove away, I deleted his contact from my phone. I was 18. My trust was legally mine, and for the first time in my life, I was free.